The purpose of this program is to give you an overview about ALS so that you can understand more about the disease as well as some of the resources available to you. This video is for educational use only. It is not intended to replace consultation with your healthcare provider.
So one of the most exciting things to talk about with ALS is to talk about clinical research and what's coming on into the future. You need to know that there are different kinds of research. So basic science research, that's with test tubes and little mice. That's stuff that's preclinical. And clinical research is with people. That's the stuff that gets my attention. There are drug trials, but there are also clinical management trials. And those things that we talked about earlier, about 4 things that work to slow down the process of ALS, to increase survival and increase quality of life, 3 of those things were from management studies. We learned about the benefits of going to a team clinic. We've learned about breathing, nutrition, quality of life, exercise, symptom management. Those are all clinical management studies, very, very important. And then there are observational studies where we learn more about either a particular aspect of the disease or we learn more about the disease in general. So in clinical studies, clinical research, we have 4 phases. Phase 1 is just for safety. In ALS, that might be 20 patients, maybe 40 patients. We're looking to see if this drug is going to cause any serious harm to anyone. So I always joke around and say, is anybody going to turn green? We want to see if anyone turns green. Phase 2 is for safety in more people. So it might be 60, 80, 120, 140 patients in ALS. So it's still few subjects, but it's more than in a phase 1. And it might be open label. That means that nobody takes placebo. Some phase 1 studies are no placebo. And we're looking to see, does this have an effect? Is there a hint of a promise for this? Phase 3 is a pivotal study. This is the study that if it's positive, the company's going to go to the FDA and try to get approval. Always multi-center, always double-blind and placebo-controlled. You've got to have a group of people that are going through their ALS at the same time that the people taking the drug are going through. Because we've talked before about things have changed over the years in terms of how patients do with ALS, so it needs to be contemporaneous. Phase 4 is post-marketing, long-term follow-up. And that might be something that happens with Adarvo. We don't know at this point, but certainly we can get some good information from phase 4 studies. We can talk about the pipeline. What happens? How do these things come to pass? How long does it take to get a drug from development into the drugstores? So research and development R&D is 3 to 6 years. They look at the target. What do they want to affect? In ALS, we have at least 20 different things that we know go wrong in ALS. Riluzole is aimed at too much glutamate, where the upper motor neurons talk to the lower motor neurons. Some drugs are aimed at oxidative stress. Others are aimed at inflammation. So we've got lots of different targets. But if you look, 50 to 60% of the drugs that go into research and development, we're talking about the laboratory here, not clinical studies, 50 to 60% of those drugs will fail. And then preclinical, we're talking about the little mice here and other animals, poor little mice. In preclinical studies, there's about a 30% failure rate. In ALS, we look at mice, we look at the SOD1 mouse, And we're going to be looking at C9 or 72 mice very shortly. Studies in people. So this is clinical trials, and we're talking about phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oftentimes the phase 1 study will be in healthy volunteers rather than in patients with ALS. It's a 90% or more failure rate. That's a lot. If the drug passes through phase 3 and they apply to the FDA, then it takes 1 to 2 years. Now, most drug companies in ALS are paying for fast track approval. And what that does is they pay money so that instead of their application going at the end of the line, their application goes to the front of the line. Well, this is a good thing for everyone. A high tide raises all boats. So if you got money going in to pay for more FDA officials looking at things, then the drug studies that are at the end of the line, they're going to go through more quickly too. So this is a good thing. But fast track doesn't mean anything except that they go to the front of the line. The cost overall for this whole process, you can add up the years, the cost $1 to $2 billion US dollars. It's billion with a B as in boy. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to have a few slides on stem cells. So what are stem cells? Stem cells are not magic, but they are cells that are little newbie babies. They don't know what they want to be when they grow up. They can grow up to be any cell in the body. So they could be a liver cell, a skin cell, a hair cell. They can renew themselves like skin cells, or they can make a variety of other cells, like stem cells in bone marrow can be different kinds of blood cells. There are adult stem cells and embryonic stem cells. So these stem cells have to be taught how to grow up to be the kind of cell you want. They're not all stem cells are not the same. They can come from skin, fetus, bone marrow, all kinds of fat, all kinds of places that stem cells can be taken from. Those stem cells will act differently depending on their origin, and they act differently dependent on how they're taught as they're manipulated in the laboratory. Each new stem cell line, they call them lines, a group of stem cells is considered like a new drug. So I think that the main thing to think about with clinical trials in ALS is that the technology is just skyrocketing. The numbers of drug studies are skyrocketing. I only gave you a taste of just a few of the studies that are going on right now. There's lots and lots of hope for the future. And these studies are so exciting, looking at lots of different kinds of targets. I know that we're going to see some very, very significant results in the next 3 to 5 years. I just really have that hope in my heart. I really do. So, in summary for our discussion today, looking at all the pieces put together, we know that there is treatment that works. We know that this treatment works, and we know this from research that's been done. I am a data-driven person, and I'm putting this up here because we know it's evidence-based. Go to a multidisciplinary team, you will live longer and have a higher quality of life. Pay attention to nutrition, do your best, and to prevent weight loss and stay robust. And hydration is also very important. Treat hypoventilation. Hypoventilation is taking breaths that are a little too small. Treat hypoventilation with non-invasive ventilation when the time comes. Embrace it as your best friend. You have control of all of these things. And then 2 drugs now, 2 drugs to to slow down the progression of ALS, stay stronger longer. Here are some resources: the ALS Association and their websites, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, NEALS, the Northeast ALS Consortium. They've got some good information on there in terms of drug studies. Clinicaltrials.gov has every drug study in the United States is listed there. If it's on clinicaltrials.gov and it's foreign, it doesn't mean it was vetted. It doesn't mean the FDA says it's a good study. When I looked up stem cells on clinicaltrials.gov, there were stem cells from China, South Korea, Iran. You know, I mean, there are places you just would not want to go for your stem cell trials. So it's a list. It's also a little difficult to navigate. Family Caregiver Alliance for caregiver support and for issues around behavior or cognitive changes. An excellent site there. So I thank you for listening to this program. I hope that you've got something out of it today.